History doesn't always roar. Sometimes it bleeds quietly for a century, then comes back swinging. China's rise didn't begin with skyscrapers, rockets, or global trade deals. It began with humiliation. Forced treaties, burned ports, a long memory of loss that never healed. And that scar tissue? That's exactly what forged the modern Chinese state we see today. This is not a feel-good comeback story. This is a hard one. And on the scars of a global storm fronts, we don't flinch from hard truths. When foreign powers forced open China's doors in the 1800s, it wasn't just trade that flooded in. It was addiction, imbalance, and control. The Opium Wars shattered the illusion that China was untouchable. A once dominant empire was outgunned, outmaneuvered, and carved into economic zones it didn't control. Ports fell under foreign influence. Laws bent to outsiders. Sovereignty became negotiable. This wasn't just a military defeat, it was psychological warfare, a civilizational slap that echoed for generations. China learned a brutal lesson early. Power respected only power. What followed was, well, a long spiral. Internal unrest brewed. Weak leadership took hold. And, external pressure kept stacking up like debt with interest. China didn't just lose wars. It lost confidence. The phrase "never again" hadn't been spoken yet, but honestly, it was being written into the national bloodstream. Foreign armies marched freely, resources flowed outward, and decisions, well, they were dictated from beyond its borders. For a civilization that saw itself as the center of the world, this was existential trauma. And, well, trauma has consequences. Old systems couldn't survive this new reality. The imperial structure cracked under pressure and finally collapsed. And what replaced it wasn't stability, but chaos. Competing visions fought over China's future. The country fractured, not just politically, but socially. Millions paid the price. But here's the key. Out of chaos comes clarity. Pain sharpens purpose. Then came total war, invasion, cities destroyed, civilians targeted, industry shattered. China didn't just fight for survival, it endured. While Europe burned and the world focused on World War II, China was already deep in a brutal struggle that demanded resilience at every level. This period, well, it really hardened the nation. Logistics mattered, unity mattered, control mattered. The lesson was simple and honestly unforgiving. A weak state invites destruction. After the guns cooled, China chose, a radical reset. Old hierarchies were swept aside. Centralized power took over. The goal wasn't comfort, it was survival. The new leadership believed quite firmly that fragmentation was death. Unity, even if enforced, was life. Mistakes followed, massive ones. Economic experiments failed, millions suffered, But even failure was absorbed into the larger lesson. Independence comes before prosperity, control before growth. This is where modern China's mindset is born. Not in success, but in memory. The leadership looked backward to move forward. Every policy carried a shadow of the past. Foreign dependence was seen as a trap, military weakness as an invitation, internal division as a fatal flaw. So the state tightened its grip. It invested in industry, it disciplined labour, it planned long-term. While others chased quick wins, China played endurance chess. World War II didn't just redraw borders, it reset power. Old empires fell, new systems emerged. China studied this carefully. It saw how industrial strength, population scale, and centralized planning could turn devastation into dominance. The lesson was absorbed and, refined. Economic power could be weaponized. Trade could replace conquest. Influence could move faster than armies. Decades later, China opened to the world, but, on its own terms. This wasn't submission, it was strategy. Foreign capital was welcomed, but control stayed domestic. Manufacturing scaled, infrastructure exploded, skills transferred, markets expanded. Every factory built was a brick laid against past humiliation. Every export was proof that the old narrative was dead. Today's China is the result of layered memory. Ports once forced open now ship goods worldwide. Industries once crushed now dominate supply chains. Military weakness was, replaced with calculated strength. This rise wasn't accidental. It was engineered by history's scars. Pain didn't paralyze China. It disciplined it. Understanding China means, understanding its fear of weakness, its obsession with sovereignty, and its intolerance for fragmentation. These aren't random traits. They are historical survival mechanisms. Ignore that, and you misunderstand everything. On the scars of a global storm fronts, we don't just tell you what happened. We tell you why it still matters. Because the past isn't past. It's policy. It's posture. It's power. If this deep dive sharpened your perspective, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, share this story, and, stay with us. History leaves scars. We show you how they shape the future.